There is a war going on. It is a spiritual war, a war between truth and lies. Only one thing cuts through all lies and opinions. It is God's word. It is God's sword.
Deuteronomy chapter 3. Moses says, "Then we turned and went up the road to Bashan. And Og, the king of Bashan with all his people, came out to meet us in battle at Edrei. But Yahweh said to me, 'Do not fear him, for I have given him and all his people and his land over to your hand. You shall do to him just as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon.' So Yahweh our God also gave Og, king of Bashan, with all his people, over to our hand. We struck them until there was no survivor remaining for him. We captured all his cities at that time. There was not a town which we did not take from them. 60 cities, all the region of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these were cities fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, beside a great many unwalled towns, and we devoted them to destruction as we did to Sihon, king of Heshbon, devoting to destruction the men, the women, and the little ones of every city. But all the animals and the spoil of the cities we took as our plunder. And thus we took the land at that time from the hand of the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, from the valley of Arnon to Mount Hermon. Sidonians call Hermon Sirion, the Amorites call it Sinir. All the cities of the plateau and all Gilead and all Bashan, as far as Salakah and Edrei, the cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the Rephaim. Behold, his bedstead was an iron bedstead, and it is in Rabbah, the sons of Ammon. Its length was 9 cubits, and its width 4 cubits by ordinary cubits. So we took possession of this land at that time from Or, which is by the valley of Arnon, and half the hill country of Gilead and its cities to the Reubenites. I gave it to the Reubenites and to the Gadites. And the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, I gave to the half-tribe of Manasseh. All the region of Argob, concerning all Bashan, it is called the land of Rephaim. Jair, the son of Manasseh, took the regions of Argob as far as the border of the Geshurites and the Maacathites, and called it, that is Bashan, after his own name, Havoth Jair, as it is to this day. And to Machir I gave Gilead. And to the Reubenites and to the Gadites I gave from Gilead even as far as the valley of Arnon, the middle of the valley as a border, as far as the river Jabbok, the border of the sons of Ammon, that is the Arabah, with the Jordan as a border from Chinnereth, even as far as the Sea of Arabah, the Salt Sea, at the foot of the slopes of Pisgah on the east. Chinnereth, you know it as Galilee. It would get a name change centuries later. Actually, many different names, including the Sea of Tiberias. But verse 18, "And I commanded you at that time, saying, Yahweh your God has given you this land to possess it. All you men of valor shall cross over armed before your brothers, the sons of Israel. But your wives and your little ones and your livestock," I know that you have much livestock, "shall remain in your cities which I have given you, until Yahweh gives rest to your brothers as to you. They also possess the land which Yahweh your God will give them beyond the Jordan, and then you may return every man to his possession which I have given you." And they commanded Joshua at that time, saying, "Your eyes have seen all that Yahweh your God has done to these 2 kings. So Yahweh shall do to all the kingdoms into which you are about to cross. Do not fear them, for Yahweh your God is the one fighting for you." I also pleaded with Yahweh at that time, saying, O Lord Yahweh, you have begun to show your slave, you've begun to show your slave your greatness and your strong hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as yours? Oh, let me, I pray, cross over and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that good hill country and Lebanon. But Yahweh was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. And Yahweh said to me, enough. Speak to me no more on this matter, or of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah, and lift up your eyes to the west and to the north and the south and the east. See it with your eyes, for you shall not cross over this Jordan. But command Joshua and strengthen him and encourage him, for he shall go across at the head of this people. And he will cause them to inherit the land which you will see. So we remained in the valley opposite Beth Peor. So there is chapter 3 read. Now let us review together. The first thing we read of is the victory over the kingdom of Og. And Og, he's the king. He's the only one of the mutants, the only one of the giants, the descendants of Repha, the Rephaim, who actually was a king. All the other giants that we read about in the Old Testament in the land of Canaan, not that that was the only place where they were, but they certainly were concentrated there. All of the mutants were champions like Goliath or Goliath's brothers, others. They were giants that because of their mass, they were champions, they were warriors, but none of them were kings except for this guy Og. Og is enormous, and we don't have his dimension, but we do have the dimension of his bed. So he's so huge that he requires a 14-foot-long bed, 6 feet wide. It's iron, and here Moses points out that the Ammonites have this thing as sort of in a museum. It's in Rabbah of the sons of Ammon. He gives us dimensions. So there's another whole story I'll try not to go into, but there were giants in the land of Israel, and their existence was always connected to evil. The Canaanites, that God is in fact judging through the Israelites coming into this land, are intensely wicked. Back in Genesis chapter 15, their wickedness is spoken of in the days of Abraham. And God does in fact say that they have not filled up the cup of wrath, but they're working on it, and centuries later. Now, 4.5 centuries later, Israel comes, and they come as God's tool of judgment. They come, they go to war, and they exterminate the kingdom of Og, yes, as they did with the kingdom of Sihon, and that is every man, woman, and child. Everyone from that very corrupt people were executed. The same God who gave us the 10 Commandments, and we'll review that again, the same God who commands, thou shalt not murder, does in fact order execution. And there's a necessary distinction. Your King James Version, which just translates, thou shalt not kill, is messed up because there's a distinction between killing and murder. Murder is the unwarranted taking of innocent life. Killing in war, and killing as a consequence of murder following due process, it is God who actually commands capital punishment. Even before Moses, God tells Noah, anyone who sheds man's blood, by man his blood must be shed. So the very foundation of civilization is the sanctity of human life. That humans are made in the image of God, therefore you are seriously going to be held accountable to what you do with regard to human life. So I'll say to you again, that there's a distinction between murder and killing. There is necessary killing, particularly when due process has been followed and someone has been convicted of murder. The murderer must be executed. So anyway, the people of Israel come into the land of promise, they go to war, and they exterminate the kingdom of Sihon and the kingdom of Og, the mutant king, the giant. They take possession of the land. And so then you read in verses 13 and following how Moses divided up that land. The land, which, by the way, today is referred to as the Golan Heights. It was a good land for cattle. 2.5 tribes said, we want our inheritance on this side of the Jordan, even though it's on the other side of the border that God promised. Let us have it over here because we're into cattle, and this is a great land for cattle. So Moses grants them that particular land. Last thing we read in chapter 3 is Moses' plea to Yahweh. Please let me go and see this good land. Let me. And Yahweh said, no, and don't bring it up again. Yahweh said, I will hear no more of this. I want to point out to you that the writer of Hebrews in the New Testament makes much of the fact that Moses, the lawgiver, the one through whom the law was delivered, was not able to bring Israel into the promised land. But who does? Joshua. That's an interesting sort of thing. There's no such thing as a coincidence. The name Joshua, in case you don't know, is exactly the same as what we translate Jesus. The name Yeshua, as they say it, is what we translate as Jesus. So Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, becomes the leader who leads Israel into the land of promise. And the New Testament points out that Moses, the lawgiver, the law cannot by itself lead you to the promised land or get you, as it were, to heaven. The law serves to help us realize our need for a Savior, how far we fall short. It is Yeshua, not Yeshua the son of Nun, but Yeshua of Nazareth. Another Yeshua who is the one who brings us into the promised land, who is the one who can save. Is that clear? That Moses, representative of the law, is not the one to bring Israel into the promised land, but Yeshua. Likewise, New Testament, the law given by Moses or given to Moses, delivered through him, will not by itself save us. We need Jesus. We need Yeshua of Nazareth. Now, chapter 4. You didn't come here today for 3 points in a poem, did you? A little inspirational thought. You came for the word, and we will consume another chapter. Verse 4. So now, Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I'm teaching you to do, so that you may live and go and take possession of the land which Yahweh, the God of your fathers, is giving you. Pause your reading. Let me point out once more the dual reality. It's not one or the other. It's a two-truth reality, just like a sword. A good sword has got two edges. So it is with the truths of God. On one side of that blade, God said, I'm going to give you this land. On the other side of that blade, you got to go and take possession of it. I'm giving it, you've got to take it. You've got to go take possession. The same dual reality exists now in the New Testament. God is the one who brings about change in us by the Holy Spirit from the deepest part within. At the same time, on the other side of that blade, you and I have to cooperate with God changing. There are things we must do. There are habits and vices we got to turn our back on. There are other things that we now need to do. And so I point out to you again, a dual reality. It's a dual reality. It's not one or the other. It is both. You shall not add to the word which I'm commanding you, nor take away from it, that you may keep the commandments of Yahweh your God, which I'm commanding you. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh has done in the case of Baal Peor. For all the men who walked after Baal Peor, Yahweh your God has destroyed them from among you. citing earlier judgment because of idolatry. Moses warns them. You're witnesses to that. In verse 4 he said, "But you who clung to Yahweh your God are alive today, every one of you. See, I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as Yahweh my God commanded me, so that you should do thus in the land where you are entering to possess it. You shall keep and do them. For that is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people." Pause right there, please. Can I just throw this out for you to factor in? Please factor this in. The wisdom of the law of God. Let's just talk about the Ten Commandments. Again, we're going to read them. The vertical and the horizontal. I point out to you again that just as the very law of God is on two tables, and the first four deal with our vertical obligation to God. Have no other gods before him. Do not misuse his name. Have no other gods before him. No graven image. Do not misuse his name. And then honor the Sabbath, keep it holy. And then the following 6 commands. Honor your father and mother. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. And do not covet. That's the one that hangs us all. Because that one happens on the inside, nobody sees it. Do not covet. Those 10 commands make freedom possible. Believing and honoring those commands makes a culture happen like what happened here in America. It happened here to a greater degree than it happened in parts of Europe. Why is it, my friend, former Congressman Bob McEwen, he always points out that the vast majority of inventions in the last 2 centuries have all happened here. Why? We are a great melting pot. We are a nation of immigrants. This is a reality. So what? Do people get smarter when they come here? And are, then able to invent? No. What do they get here that makes invention possible? They get freedom. Freedom makes prosperity possible. I'm going to say it again. It's a rule all around the world. It is only, as Bob McEwen says, this way all the time. The greater the freedom, the greater the wealth. The greater the tyranny in government, the greater the poverty. And there's no better example than the Korean Peninsula cut in half at the 38th parallel. One side got freedom, the other side got tyranny. A satellite picture from the night of any satellite over the Korean Peninsula shows one half of that peninsula is dark for the degree of poverty they have. They can't even afford lights. And the other half is well lit. On one side, millions starve every single year. On the other side, they prosper. They're one of the wealthiest little nations in the world. So freedom makes prosperity. What makes freedom? Don't you think about that? What makes freedom? Why did it happen here? Because of the influence of the Bible, because of the influence of the Scripture, because of the wisdom. As Moses said, that is your wisdom and your understanding. In the sight of all peoples, it will hear all these statutes. Wisdom, if you fear God and reverence God, that affects what you do and how you do business. Why? Why so much fraud now? Why? Why are there now bars on windows in our cities? Why does everybody have to have a Ring camera? Why so many security devices? Why? Why are we now in danger and oppressed by our own fellow Americans? Why? Because we've abandoned what made us great, what made freedom happen. We've abandoned that, and our educational system kicked those commandments out with God. Let me put it to you this way. It wasn't our educational system that did it. It was our leftist courts. in the 1960s that kicked God out of our schools and out of our courthouses. His commandments, according to the Supreme Court, had to be taken down. We've abandoned those commands. And now our government has turned our educational system into a religious institution that is absolutely at enmity with God. And what is it producing? Tyranny. It is producing tyranny. It is indeed. So I'll say to you again, freedom produces great wealth and prosperity. But what produces freedom? Why did it happen here? It happened here because of spiritual revivals, like the Great Awakening, like the Second Great Awakening, the Protestant Reformation. Biblical knowledge, a fear of God, and a value to human life, all human life. God's commands, the vertical and the horizontal. I will remind you again that God stepped into history and lived as a man and died on the intersection of the vertical and the horizontal on behalf of all of us lawbreakers so we could be forgiven. Praise to his name. So he goes on, verse 7, for what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as is Yahweh, our God, whenever we call on him? Or what great nation is there that has statutes and judgments as righteous as this whole law, which I'm setting before you today? Only keep yourself and keep your soul very carefully, lest you forget the things which your eyes have seen, unless they depart from your heart all the days of your life. But make them known to your sons and to your grandsons. Remember the day you stood before Yahweh your God at Horeb? That's another reference to Sinai. When Yahweh said to me, assemble the people to me, that I may cause them to hear my words, so they may learn to fear me all the days of they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children. And you came near, and you stood at the foot of the mountain. And the mountain burned with fire to the very heart of the heavens. Darkness, cloud, and dense gloom. And Yahweh spoke to you from the midst of the fire, and you heard the sound of words. But you saw no form, only a voice. So he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to do. That is, the 10 commandments. He wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you might do them in the land where you are going over to possess it. So keep your souls very carefully. Keep or guard your souls very carefully. Since you did not see any form on the day Yahweh spoke to you at Horeb from the midst of the fire, lest you act corruptly and make a graven image for yourselves in the form of any figure, the likeness of a male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the sky, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the water below the earth. Lest you lift up your eyes to heaven and see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, and be drawn away and worship and serve them, those which Yahweh your God has apportioned for all the peoples under the whole heaven. In other words, God gave you these. He gave you the sun, the moon, and the stars. Don't worship them. Worship he who gave them to you. Did you see the full moon last night? Now, those of us at 6:30 service saw it again when we got up this morning before it set. It's beautiful. Only an irrational mind would talk to the moon and go, good morning, moon. An irrational mind would worship it as if it were a god. The rational mind goes, good job, God, nice moon. Moses calls us to that kind of rational action. Verse 20, but Yahweh has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace from Egypt to be a people for his own inheritance, as today. Now Yahweh was angry with me on your account and swore that I would not cross the Jordan and that I would not enter the good land which Yahweh your God is giving you as an inheritance. For I will die in this land. I shall not cross the Jordan, but you shall cross and take possession of this good land. So keep yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Yahweh your God, which he cut with you. And make for yourselves a graven image in the form of anything against which Yahweh your God has commanded you. For Yahweh your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. Take note of that. He is, in fact, a consuming fire. He is a jealous God. He is holy and just. He is jealous in the best way. Look at this in verse 25. When you become the father of children and children's children, and remain long in the land, and act corruptly, and make a graven image in the form of anything, and do that which is evil in the sight of Yahweh your God, so as to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that you will surely perish quickly from the land where you're going over the Jordan to possess it. You shall not prolong your days on it, but will be utterly destroyed. So he's like, I call heaven and earth. I'm telling you that everything in creation is going to testify against you. Verse 27, and Yahweh will scatter you among the peoples, and you will remain few in number among the nations where Yahweh drives you. So he warns them, you'll be scattered, you become a minority. In verse 28, and there you will serve gods, the work of man's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. So he warned them of the very captivity that they would later experience under the Babylonians or the Assyrians. And he warned. They didn't heed that warning, but he does warn them here in verse 29. But from there, you will seek Yahweh your God, and you will find him, for you'll search for him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you're in distress, and all these things have come upon you in the last days, you will return to Yahweh your God and listen to his voice. For Yahweh your God is a compassionate God. He will not fail you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant with your fathers, which he swore to them. All right, think about that. The same context where we are told in verse 24 that our God is a consuming fire, jealous God. We are also told in that 31st verse, he is a compassionate God. Do you understand that dual reality? Again, it's not one or the other. He's not only holy and just and rightfully jealous, he is also compassionate. It's not one or the other, but both. All right, in verse 31, again, for Yahweh your God is a compassionate God. He says he will not fail you nor destroy you. Pause your reading. Can I point out to you that there were many nations that he did destroy? They don't exist. There's only one nation that's still with us. You haven't met any Philistines. You haven't met any Moabites. You have not met, if you did, they didn't know it. And neither do you. You've not met any Babylonians or Assyrians. You've met many. Some of you are Jews. You've met many Jews. And there is also a nation of them called Israel. Why? Because God said, I will not destroy you. I will not. I won't forget the covenant which your fathers, which he swore to them. God doesn't forget the covenant. And everyone, I don't care how Christian or how biblical they are otherwise, anybody who says God has forgotten them, God is done with them, is mistaken. Verse 32. Indeed, ask now concerning the former days, which were before you, since the day that God created man on the earth, and inquire from one end of the heavens to the other, has anything been done like this great thing? Or has anything been heard like it? Has any people heard the voice of God speaking from the midst of the fire as you have heard it and lived? These are all sort of rhetorical questions, because no, God has not revealed himself to any other nation, not like he did with Israel. God has revealed himself to individuals, and individuals have affected nations. But God only dealt with one nation in this way, and I'm telling you, the entire modern world owes a debt to the Jews. We owe a debt to Moses. Civilization freedom. It is the most outrageous thing for anyone to call himself a Christian and to call himself an American and be hating the Jews. It's demonic. It's irrational. God revealed himself uniquely to the whole human race. As he said when he called Abraham, I'm going to make you a blessing to all the nations. In you and in your seed will all the families of the earth be blessed. God said that, calling Abraham. Look at verse 34. Or has a God tried to take for himself a nation from within another nation with trials, with signs and wonders, and with war, and with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with great terrors, as Yahweh your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? Pause your reading. Maybe you're not aware of this, and if you are aware of it, maybe you're only aware of it because I told you about it. But there exists something called the slave Bible. In all my education, somehow or another, I missed that. I never heard of it until I saw it on exhibit at the Museum of the Bible. Got this gig, I always mention it. Got to use my weird voice to do the voiceover narration for one of the exhibits at the Museum of the Bible down in Washington. So if you go there and you put on the VR goggles and you go to Israel virtually, and you hear this happy music score, and as you're looking around, you hear a voice, it's my voice, that goes, the Sea of Galilee. And you go, I know him! For doing that, I said, the production company that was doing it said, what do you charge? I don't charge anything. Could you get me free tickets? Sure. Then I find out pastors get in free anyway. But when I finally got the chance to go, my son-in-law was with me, John. We were on our way to Kenya. We were flying through D.C. Got to go to the museum. It was at the museum that the slave Bible, which was on tour, happened to be there. The slave Bible was produced in Europe, made its way along with slavery to the colonies on these shores. What is the slave Bible? Well, the slave Bible is the product of some men who said, we want these slaves to know some Bible, but not all of it. We don't want them to know the whole Bible. Now think about the wickedness of this and the presumption that would cause men to dare to go through and select which part of the Bible they want people to know and which part they don't want them to know. That is an evil act. And yet, it happened here in America. Heavily redacted Bible was produced that has none of the reference that we just read. There is no Exodus in the slave Bible because those who produced the slave Bible, publishing that, didn't want any of the slaves to know about God freeing slaves like he did Israel. Sadly, most of the pastors in America, even the good ones now, have their own version of the slave Bible. It's all sort of unspoken and informal, but it's all about what portions of the Bible they do not teach from, what portions of the Bible they do not make known to the flock of God, what parts of the Bible are not underlined and highlighted by the average American Christian. So what are we doing? The same exact thing, are we not? We're deciding, well, there's parts of this I really like, and there's other parts I don't really need so much of the Deuteronomy, or Leviticus, or whatever you've decided is not that important. This reference that God did this, that Moses calls them to, and he says, has this ever been done? Has a God tried to go and to take for himself a nation from within another nation, and to do all the wonders that Yahweh did in order to set us free? Verse 35, to you it was shown that you might know that Yahweh, he is God. There is no other besides him. Verse 36, out of the heavens he caused you to hear his voice, to discipline you on earth. And on earth he caused you to see his great fire, and you heard his words from the midst of the fire. Because he loved your fathers and therefore he chose their seed after them. And he personally brought you from Egypt by his great power, dispossessing before you nations greater and mightier than you, to bring you in and give you their land for an inheritance as it is today. Know therefore today, and take it to your heart, that Yahweh, he is God in heaven above, and on the earth below there is no other. So you shall keep his statutes and his judgments, which I am commanding you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days on the land which Yahweh your God is giving you for all the days. All right, verse 41, then Moses set apart 3 cities across the Jordan to the east toward the sunrise, that a manslayer might flee there, who slew his neighbor without premeditation, not hating him previously, so he shall flee to one of these cities that he might live. And those cities are going to be identified by name and listed here. So again, I would remind you, there was in this arrangement that God had with the covenant people, no standing army. There was no police force. Everybody policed themselves. They did their own tribe. There was no court system other than tribal elders. But justice and due process was supposed to happen by those tribal elders. If somebody accidentally killed someone, what we today would call manslaughter, the closest thing to prison, because there were no prisons, the closest thing to prison was the city of refuge. You killed somebody, you claim it was an accident, they cannot prove that it wasn't, they cannot prove that you hated him and premeditated this, it was a setup, then you continue to live, but you lost your freedom. The only freedom you have is within the borders of the city of refuge. Outside the city of refuge, if you leave there, you're taking your life in your own hands. And they who seek vengeance can, in fact, kill you for the life that you took. So the city of refuge was the closest thing. I'm going to say, again, what modern America does. In the name of being humane, is we lock people up, we incarcerate them. We do things that are crueler than a public beating. We send them, we lock them up, and they get beatings all the time from each other. They live at the mercy of other cruel men. It's crime school. Everything about it is messed up. They are a financial burden. They who are committing the crimes are a financial burden to all the rest of us. Far from restitution, they are costing us. We act like that's humane. It's not. This arrangement was much more humane. If a man was guilty of violence and that violence resulted in somebody's injury, he would receive, on the other side of due process, he would receive the violence that he dealt out. And now he's back to his family and back to work. Beat him, wound him as he wounded, and then back to work. Maybe he's learned something. Restitution. These kind of things were God's idea. This is what his law required. I'll say again, the closest thing to prison or incarceration was the city of refuge. And you've got to have cities of refuge on the east side of the Jordan. So they're listed for us. Verse 43, Bezer in the wilderness on the plateau for the Reubenites, and Ramoth in Gilead for the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan for the Manassites. Now this is the law which Moses set before the sons of Israel. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments which Moses spoke to the sons of Israel when they came out from Egypt, across the Jordan in the valley, opposite Beth Peor, the land of Sihon, the king of the Amorites who lived at Heshbon, whom Moses and the sons of Israel struck down when they came out of Egypt. They took possession of his land, the land of Og, the king of Bashan, the 2 kings of the Amorites who were across the Jordan to the east toward the sunrise, from Eror, which is on the edge of the valley of Arnon, even as far as Mount Sion, that is Hermon. With all the Arabah across the Jordan to the east, even as far as the Sea of Arabah, at the foot of the slopes of Pisgah. Chapter 5, and we'll only get to the first half of chapter 5. All of this, very necessary review from Moses at the border of the Promised Land. What else does he review? The commandments, the Big Ten. Verse 1 of chapter 5, then Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, hear, O Israel, the statutes and the judgments which I am speaking today in your hearing, that you may learn them and be careful to do them. Yahweh our God cut a covenant with us at Horeb. Yahweh did not cut this covenant with our fathers, but with us, with all those of us alive here today. Yahweh spoke to you face to face in the mountain from the midst of the fire. I was standing between Yahweh and you at that time to declare to you the word of Yahweh, for you were afraid because of the fire. It did not go up the mountain. He said, I am Yahweh your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, any likeness of what is in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them, for I, Yahweh, your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving kindness to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of Yahweh, your God, in vain. For Yahweh will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain. Observe the Sabbath to keep it holy, as Yahweh your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath of Yahweh your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your sons or your daughter, or your male slave or your female slave, or your ox or your donkey, or any of your cattle, or your sojourner who's within your gates, so that your male slave and your female slave may have rest as well as you. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. And Yahweh your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm. Therefore, Yahweh your God commanded you to observe the Sabbath. So let me just comment before reading the second table of the law. First table, first four, they deal with our obligation to God vertically. They deal with their obligation to God, the vertical. Can I point out to you that he says, do not commit the sin of having something other than me as God. And do not then try to represent me physically. Don't make a statue, don't make a picture, don't make an image, a statue, an idol, and then start bowing to it and praying to it. And then he says, do not misuse my name. And then he says, I want you to honor that Sabbath. You remember who Creator is. I'm your Creator. I labored 6 days, I rested the seventh. You commemorate who Creator is once a week. Honor the Sabbath, keep it holy. So he tells the covenant people, first four commands. Deal with your vertical obligation to God. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, friends, where we stand with God has everything to do with how we value our fellow man who is made in the image of God. Any attempt to try to just hold to the second table of the law and disregard the first table is a waste of time. If we have in America adopted the false religion of Darwinism, evolution, Lucifer's notion, if we have adopted that as the state religion, we should not be surprised of all the violent crimes and all the murders, all the exploitation of humanity, or the exploitation of our children on the World Wide Web by predator humans who've been fed in this system. Are they not, all of them, just acting according to Darwin's law? Survival of the fittest? If, on the other hand, we remember who God is, that changes, absolutely changes how we see each other. Image bearers of the Creator, valuable. Everybody's valuable. Their life is sacred. If we as a culture, and have, by the way, if we continue to trade off the concept that held to the sanctity of human life. Trade that off for another concept of what? Quality of life? Then it becomes possible for us to do everything that the Third Reich did to the Jews, whom they determined they were superior and that they were doing an evolutionary service to humankind by the slaughter of millions. Jews and gypsies, primarily the Jews. You understand what I'm saying to you? Do you understand that what we believe about God and who we all have to answer to and what is the origin of everyone else? Everybody else becomes valuable to us because they bear God's image and because he made them. And we got to answer to him. As a culture, as a society, as a people, what have we done? We've abandoned that vertical. And it produces fruit horizontally that's undeniable. Second table of the law, the minutes I got left, just a couple minutes. He continues. Verse 15. You shall remember that you were a slave. I did that already. Verse 16, the fifth command. Honor your father and your mother. Man. Now we become, because we've abandoned this, we have become a culture with far too few fathers. Honor your father and your mother. I'm telling you, if you honor your father and your mother, you will also stay together with your wife and you will together invest in your children and raise them. We've abandoned all of that, all of the raging lesbians for hire that are committing violence and harassment against federal law enforcement in the riots. They're all the product of dads who abandoned them, I'm telling you. They are a bunch of women who were deeply hurt. They were sent down that road. They're going to answer to God for what they do, but somebody has to answer for the road they got set down. They got sent down a road that has led to where they now are. And our whole society is affected by this. But the absence of fathers. God says, honor your father and your mother. That means they're both valuable. You need them both. And our culture accepted a lie that you don't. That you don't need them. And people quit staying together as father and mother. Family breakdown has produced violence in this land as God warned that it would. Honor your father and your mother as Yahweh your God has commanded you so that your days may be prolonged, that it may go well with you, and the land which Yahweh your God gives you. The Apostle Paul points out that this is the only one of the commandments that has a promise connected to it. The only command, he points out in Ephesians, the only command that has a promise. None of the other commandments have a promise. This one does. Do this so that it may go well with you, that you may live long in the land I'm giving you. I think the order is brilliant because it is this. You shall not murder. You shall not murder. I believe so much murder is, in fact, the result of the absence of fathers. You shall not commit adultery. You got to stay together. You got to recognize the sanctity of the institution of marriage. You got to recognize that God puts two people together when God puts together. Let not men tear asunder, says the Son of God. Don't commit adultery. You shall not steal. The very concept of ownership, ladies and gentlemen, introduced by the command of God, by these commands, means you cannot be a consistent biblical thinker and be a socialist. You cannot ignore ownership is part of God's concept for humanity. You cannot be a consistent Christian and a communist. You can't. It doesn't work. Can you live communally? voluntarily owning and sharing, each other. Sure you can, but you can't be a communist and be a Christian. It's inconsistent. It's inconsistent. Now, ownership is God's idea. You can't take what is somebody else's property. You can't. It's wrong. Then he says, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Don't bear false witness. The entire system is dependent upon truth being told. People not lying. Oh, so much lying now, you can't believe anything anybody says. The politicians especially. Oh my goodness, they lie. And so many of them are self-deceived, so they believe lies. It blows my mind. It really does. It blows my mind that they'll act like fascists, they want to control you, and then call you a fascist. It's insane. They lie. On that note, can I just say to you, can I just, one more thing on what's going on at present, currently, right now. There are only a couple of states where federal law enforcement is seeking to enforce the laws that were passed by the people, where there is violence and uproar. And it's not a coincidence, not a coincidence at all, that in Minnesota, where the governor himself is directly connected to a massive amount of fraud, where the riots have then been encouraged by that governor and by Minneapolis's mayor to become the diversion that has everybody talking about federal law enforcement instead of talking about the crimes that were committed and the fraud. It's not a coincidence that states where the governor is directly connected to billions of dollars being stolen, is there a governor unwilling to cooperate with federal law enforcement? That includes the state of Maine. But we are commanded not to bear false witness against your neighbor. And then the last one, the one that hangs us all. You might go through that list and go, haven't done any of that. Haven't murdered no one. Have not stolen nothing. That's a double negative. I have not committed adultery. We all have done all of it. Every one of us have in our heart. According to the teaching of the Son of God on the Sermon on the Mount, we're all guilty because we did it in our heart. But for sure, the one of all the commandments that hangs us all is that 10th one, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, his field, his male slave, or his female slave, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Now, the enemies of Scripture, who think they're smarter than God, the very Scriptures that created civilization, that actually created freedom, people who now go, do you believe that this book written by these Jews treats a wife the same as a donkey in this command? A possession? And all I can say to you is, you're an absolute idiot, a buffoon. You are a moron. That's the Greek word. You're a fool. If you miss the whole point of that command and you're just focused on a woman is listed along with a slave or a house or a donkey, you missed the point. The point is, don't look and lust for what belongs to another. Deal with this in your heart. Don't do it. Don't make this your practice. Recognize that it's a sin, that God's watching. He sees that too. And his law, think about this. His jurisdiction extends even into our thoughts. His jurisdiction and his lordship extends even into virtual reality. Oh, we got 1 minute left. These are the words which Yahweh spoke to all your assembly at the mountain from the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the dense gloom, with a great voice. And he added no more. He wrote them down on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me.
Hey, thanks for listening. We pray that the Word of God will speak to your heart as you meditate on it. we can help you grow, or if you have any questions, you can visit us at our website at ccbangor.org. Give us a phone call at area code 207-991-9555, or you can shoot us an email at office@ccbangor.org. On behalf of Pastor Ken and all of us here at Calvary Chapel Central Maine, we wish you grace and peace.